name's Jonathan Spivey. I'm the class of 2006. I was a theater major, and now I live in New York. I'm primarily an actor, mostly stage, Broadway, off-Broadway commercials, and Andy was my classmate.
I'm Andy Nagraj. I was also the class of 2006. I majored in music, and I live in Chicago, where I'm doing very much the same things that Jonathan is doing.
Sweet home Chicago. So just to give you a brief overview, we're only spending half an hour with you. We're going to try to cram a lot of content into a half an hour. We're going to show you some clips of our work. At the end of this half hour, we're also going to introduce you to our new play with music called Talmadge and Ray. That is currently a finalist, Andy, for the So Queer Playwriting Festival at Richmond Triangle Players. You can stream an excerpt of our play online for free through this Friday, January 29th. We're going to share the link with you for how to get that free ticket, and we're going to show you a little clip. But first,
I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. I'm excited that we're finalists.
I'm here to inform. There's nothing I do better than to inform. I think before we get into this conversation about current careers, Andy, we need to start with the beginning because that's a very good place to start.
Absolutely.
How did we meet? I can't remember.
We met at a school called the University of Richmond.
Yes.
We both arrived, I believe it was the fall of 2002, and we both arrived in a similar way. We both came from not too far apart in Virginia. You're from Windsor, Virginia, correct?
I'm from a tiny town called Windsor, 2 stoplights and a Dairy Queen. They used to roll up the pickup trucks in the Dairy Queen parking lot on Friday nights to play bluegrass music in the back of the pickup trucks. So that's where I grew up. And
I'm from about 50 miles away in Yorktown, Virginia. And so we both landed on campus in the fall of 2002.
That's right. You were a music major, right, Andy?
I was indeed. I was there to study vocal music, and you were a theater major.
I was a theater major. I actually started intending to be a music major, but like a lot of folks who do both, sort of landed in theater. And, we did so many shows together, Andy, but I'm trying to remember, probably the one where we first really got to know each other was a production of the musical Gypsy, starring...
That's right. Starring Lorna Luft, who was in residency at the university for that production. And that was, right from the time we got to campus, pretty much. We were in rehearsals for that show. That was our first semester freshman year. And, you really can learn a lot about another person and get to be very dear friends with them when you find yourself in the position of crouching behind a scenic flat, waiting for the scene to change so that you can both move it out to start the next scene together.
I'm going to interrupt you really quickly, Andy. I see that we have a question from Katie asking what our major was. So my major was theater and yours was music, but we both did a lot of theater on campus.
That's right.
So yes, those roles that we played in Gypsy were not, shall we say, glamorous. They were small.
Not a lot of lines.
So in between the scenes where we did have those few lines, thank you for pointing that out, we had to move a lot of scenery around, like old bus and truck scenery, push it on, pull it off. And because we were tasked with that really important job, we ended up sitting behind those flats, which are the backdrop piece of scenery to let you know where you are. We sat behind those during a lot of the scenes of the musical. And that's where we first started talking and where we first got to know each other, right?
Yeah, never while the scene was happening. We were always very quiet and respectful.
Astute, yes, studious, always. So jumping forward just a little bit, Andy, while we were in Richmond, we both spent a little bit of time after college there where we first cut our professional teeth. And maybe now is a good time at the beginning of our conversation to point out that our careers in many ways have sort of run parallel to one another, even though we're not in the same city, right? And that was sort of the beginning, right? We both started our professional experiences there right after college, right?
That's right. The university afforded us a lot of opportunities to practice our art at school, but also by virtue of being in Richmond, we had the opportunity to start working professionally while we were still students. We both started working at some of the local theater companies within the city.
Yeah,
And
plug those theater companies, Andy. What are the
sure, Swift Creek Mill, what was formerly known as the Barksdale Theater and Theater 4, which are now Virginia Repertory Theater, which is where we had kind of our capstone project together, which was a production of Disney's Beauty and the
Yes,
Beast.
the stage version of Beauty and the Beast. Now, I know all the folks watching this webinar, I know the question that they all have, and I'm going to ask you, Andy, because they really want to know,
Sure.
what was it like to wear Belle's dress at the end of the show? Did you think that the yellow would be more flattering on you than it actually was?
Why
Or,
would you ask that question that way, Jonathan?
well, I'm
I,
just wondering. You did play Belle in Beauty and the Beast.
I looked great in it.
Yes,
Uh, in point of fact, I played the Beast, and Jonathan, who did you play?
I played Cogsworth the
Lightly wound.
Cogsworth the Clock. So
Uh-huh.
you had to fly in that show, didn't you, Andy?
I did indeed. It was the big transformation scene at the end. It was full of fog and flying, and I changed into a prince before the audience's very eyes.
And
It was a
that's
lot of
truly,
fun.
truly art imitating life, if there ever was an example. Truly.
That was a great way for us to end our time in Richmond and at the university. And as I remember, that was spring of '06, and we, in point of fact, did not make it to our graduation, if
We
I
had to
recall
miss our
correctly.
graduation ceremony because we had a Sunday afternoon matinee of Beauty and the Beast. So
That was when it
while I
all
regret-
began for us, the
yeah, I
business.
regretted not being able to be there, but it was sort of a great it's a great reason to miss your graduation. And it was a
Yeah,
great sort of launch into both of our professional careers. So, Andy, why don't you go first and then I'll follow you. Give us a
sure.
thumbnail idea about you now live in Chicago. You've now done television. You've now done a lot of commercials. So, give us a brief minute or minute and a half about that time between when you graduated undergrad in 2006 and how you ended up where you are now.
Now, sure. So after I left the school, I went and did a lot of things. I went back to school. I went and got my master's degree in acting from the University of Delaware. Studied a lot of classical theater, classical repertory. I went and taught for a while. I taught at the University of Pittsburgh for a year and a half. And I also just took acting jobs wherever I could find them across the country. It took me to a lot of places across the country. And then finally, I kind of decided that I needed to live in a place. I needed to have a home. And, as I was sorting through what my options were, I kept on coming back to Chicago. Chicago has always, for me, had a great reputation as a great theater town. There are so many legendary theaters here, but also it's a city that affords you opportunities to work in a lot of different media. There are television studios here. There's TV shows, major network shows that are always in production. There are movies that are shot here. There are lots of commercials, and there's a thriving voiceover market. So that's how I landed in Chicago, and I kind of went about the business of making myself a part of the city, and making myself a part of this city's theater, voiceover, and TV community.
Yes, yes. And speaking of voiceover and commercials, we're going to show you a clip of Andy as the new Tony the Tiger in just a second. But before we do that, I see we have a question from Claire Netkin. Hello, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Life, so you can see it. Jonathan, have I used any of my improv experience from my time in STC, subject to change, in my professional career? Of course, you're seeing that experience come to life in front of you right now. I've never been a professional improv comedian, but those times learning those fundamentals of improv was certainly formative and was a life changer, a game changer. In fact, I didn't intend to share this, but I'm remembering when I first moved to New York in 2007, one of the first things that I did here was an improvised tragedy group, where instead of comic scenes, which you sort of normally expect, we every scene was intended to be embracing the tragic form. So I remember the director would make us start with 30 seconds of silence at the beginning of each scene, where you looked at your scene partner, 30 seconds of eye contact. And I like to tell people that it felt like free therapy for the performers who were doing it, because it was enormously emotionally gratifying to get to cry and scream at people for 2 hours straight once a week. But for the people in the audience who bought a ticket and said, "Oh, I'm going to see an improv show," they had no idea what they were watching. No idea. Anyway, my brief thumbnail is I finished in 2006. I moved to New York. I was non-equity at the time. For those of you in theater, you know, equity, Actors Equity is the Stage Actors Union. I left New York from 2010 to 2012. I got my MFA, Masters of Fine Arts in Acting at the Old Globe in San Diego. And I returned to New York in 2012. And since before COVID, but since have been usually performing about 3 or 4 times on stage each year, both in New York, on Broadway, off Broadway, and around the country at a lot of regional theaters, with a commercial or here thrown in there for good measure. Andy, I'm running my mouth. What else do we want to talk about?
Yeah, well, I want to know more about your experience on Broadway. I mean, that's a goal that I don't want to speak for everybody, but for a lot of us going out into the theater world, that's what we look to. That's what we strive for when we're starting out as actors. First of all, what shows have you done on Broadway?
Yes, I'm going to answer your question, and we've got a question from Ann Myers in the chat. I'm going to answer both at the same time. Ann's question is she'd love to hear about the difference between acting in a commercial production, like a Broadway production, versus in a production at a nonprofit theater. That's a really insightful question. So a commercial production, like on Broadway, the two I've done are a play called Act One that was at Lincoln Center, 2014, directed by James Lapine. The second was a play called The Front Page, the 2016 revival of The Front Page, directed by Tony winner Jack O'Brien, a truly brilliant man. I don't use that word lightly. Star-studded cast: Nathan Lane, John Slattery, John Goodman, Jefferson Mays, Holland Taylor, Sharon Renee Scott, Robert Morse. That's one of the first big differences. You would never get those sort of stars in a nonprofit theater production, because a nonprofit theater couldn't really afford those folks, to be honest. But here, I'll share a brief anecdote from The Front Page. One of the best experiences I remember from that production, I was playing a small role every night, a police officer at the end of the show, but I was also there to understudy 2 actors, Jefferson Mays and Robert Morse, both brilliant comic actors, but with very different processes. So Jefferson was a very meticulous actor. He was really into preparation. And Robert was a more sort of wide-eyed, innocent, show up and see what happens on the night kind of a guy. So because I had to understudy both of them, I was also really watching their processes really intently. And I tried to absorb that lesson from both of them in the work that I do as a comic actor now, of both preparation as a key and essential tool, but also once you've done that preparation, making sure that you can show up and let loose some of that preparation and sort of have fun and see what happens. Spontaneity is important. Andy,
Yeah,
tell us. We got a lot of questions here, and I'm going
a lot of questions coming in. Thank you for all the questions, everybody.
Why don't we forget my little agenda here and just see what else
Yeah.
folks are asking?
Well, I would love to address David Janeski's question. Hi, David. And dovetailing off of The Front Page, I recall that.
Sorry, what is the question, Andy? How did the two of us?
Sure. How did the two of you manage working on a project while not in the same city? And I can recall helping Jonathan audition for The Front Page via via a video audition. One of the things that we have tried to maintain over the course of our time after Richmond is our relationship as writing partners. We started at school, and throughout the years, we've managed to continue collaborating, which has been a lot of fun. And one of the projects that we have that has carried us through is a musical that we, in fact, first wrote at University of Richmond when we were the summer after our freshman year, called Murphy's Law.
Yeah, Andy,
I think we have a clip of that.
Clip from Murphy's Law.
Yeah, sure.
Open that up, and I'm sharing, and here we go.
Turn up and stroke of luck into possibility. Turn up and stroke of love into possibility. Turn up and stroke of luck into possibility. Murphy's Law, Murphy's Law, Murphy's Law ain't gonna apply to me. Yeah, 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 to me. Murphy's L-A-W. Better believe I'll be alright. Murphy's Law.
All right, that was UR alum Duran Tyree, class of 2005. I don't know if you're watching now, Duran, but if you watch later, that clip really featured you more than it did our musical. Thank you so much for being part of that reading, which happened at Richmond Triangle Players in, I believe, the summer of 2016. 16. Yeah,
that's right. And so that's just one of the projects that we've been able to continue chipping away at over the years. So that we started writing that in 2003, and we've continued working on it ever since. Google Drive has been our big friend in working from different cities, and we'll schedule readings and workshops every once in a while to keep on chipping away at stuff.
Yes, that musical Murphy's Law received its professional premiere, in Pittsburgh in 2016, the same year. Andy,
That's
before
right,
we talk about Talmadge and Ray, and just as a reminder, we're going to show you a clip of an excerpt from Talmadge and Ray. You can get a free ticket to see our full excerpt, 45 minutes, as part of the So Queer Playwriting Festival at Richmond Triangle Players. Before we jump to talk about that, I cannot let these folks not see a clip of Tony the Tiger. Andy is the new voice of Tony the Tiger. Let's see. Here we go. This is Tony the Tiger on Stephen Colbert. And here's the clip.
I'm here because all across the country, some schools are being forced to cut sports, and I'm not okay with that. So I started Mission Tiger to help save school sports for as many kids as possible.
Well, that's wonderful, Tony.
I bet you played a lot of school sports yourself, eh, Stephen?
That's wonderful, Tony.
Andy, tell us about the audition process for that. What is it like to audition for a part that's sort of already in existence?
Sure. It was done all remotely. I auditioned from Boise, Idaho, where I was doing a theater contract at the time. And it's equal parts knowing the original material and then bringing yourself to it. I didn't realize that I had a good Tony the Tiger voice. It's one of those stupid human tricks that I realized I could do it when the audition came in.
Yes, and this is a good time to point out too that that's not just the voice. So Andy, that clip from Colbert, and I'll play a similar clip in a second. That's a motion capture clip. So what that means, most of you probably already know this, but many folks may not. So you weren't just doing the voice there. You were on the set in presumably a spandex suit with motion capture.
With sensors sewn into it. And so the live studio audience that was there, I was in the chair next to Stephen, and the studio audience, if they looked at the stage, they would see Stephen Colbert and some weird guy in a spandex suit. But if they looked into the monitors at the time, it was all rendering the animation in real time. So if you looked into the monitors, you saw Stephen Colbert talking to Tony the Tiger.
I'm going to show a similar clip here.
Jonathan
Let's see if
also
you
has some
recognize
experience
his
with motion
voice,
capture.
Andy.
luck you had's about to run dry.
The thing is, I'm getting married. I am. This is the last you'll see of me. It was beautiful, but I'm leaving.
Get clever, get dead. It's your choice.
My gosh, all my
Yeah.
Shakespeare professors are really proud right now. I can sense that you're proud out there. That's a game called Red Dead Redemption 2 by Rockstar Games. Similarly, that was also shot with motion capture. So we did it in a soundstage, an empty soundstage. I think it was in Queens with that same spandex suit. And we had monitors while we shot it that sort of showed you what you would look like in the game. And interestingly, the way they were imagining the physicality for that character when we shot it was this big, sort of oafish, 6.5 foot tall, big fat character. But they ended up with someone that I don't think looks exactly like me.
Did you have any sense at the time, Jonathan, that how what you were doing was projecting, or how they were going to use what you were doing? Did you have any idea at the time, or were you just generating material for them?
Yes. So I remember the audition for that, actually, because they wouldn't send you the script. Sometimes when you're auditioning, especially for a TV show, they might send you a dummy scene because they don't want the real script getting out there. I remember the audition for that was a scene where it was sort of a creepy guy at a gas station who was sort of talking to a person who was trying to pump their gas, and sort of a menacing kind of character. They asked for the Southern accent. And then at the end of that audition, they panned the camera back really far and had me just sort of walk around the room. And I didn't realize what was going on at the time, but in retrospect, I know they were looking to see what your posture was like. They were looking to see what your carriage was like, because that's really what they're getting in addition to your voice on a motion capture shoot, is how you carry yourself, because that's what's going to reflect in the character. So
Cool.
All that classical experience, I guess, did come in handy in some way, right?
It did indeed. I think it's a good time for us to talk a little bit about our current project,
Yes.
which is our latest play that we've been writing called Talmadge and Ray. We've mentioned it a few times. It is a play for two actors that you and I have written for ourselves to perform. And as you mentioned, it is currently one of the finalists for the inaugural So Queer Playwriting Festival at Richmond Triangle Players in our beloved Richmond, Virginia.
That's right. Talmadge and Ray is a two-hander. It's the first show Andy and I have written for ourselves to perform. It tells the story of Talmadge, which is my character, a closeted Southern Baptist choir director. The show
and Ray, the plumber who shows up to fix his toilet.
That's right. The show's not autobiographical, but it is drawing on experiences that both Andy and I had in the South, and explores themes of race relations, sexual identity, and intersectionality. But that sounds very dry, but the story is told in a broad sitcom style format, sort of in the vein of the Andy Griffith Show. I think Mary Alice has just dropped a link for you to get a free ticket to watch an excerpt of the first 45 minutes of Talmadge and Ray as part of the So Queer Festival. You have only until Friday, January 29th, to watch that excerpt. I'm going to show you a brief teaser right now. Let me find that. Here it is. Here we go.
Excuse me.
Oh my Lord! Oh my Lord!
Whoa.
Who are you?
What's
How
the
did you
matter?
get in here? Oh my Lord!
just came
You
in the
want
front
money,
door.
don't you? Wallet.
You don't have to pay me
Where's
till the job's
wallet?
done.
Here's my wallet. There's not much
I'm
in there, but
I'm
you
not
can
here
have
to
it if you
rob
promise to
you.
leave without hurting me. Please,
Look,
mister.
buddy, nobody
I
is
am
getting
begging you.
hurt.
Please, please
down.
don't blow up our
Calm
church.
down.
Please.
Where's your bathroom?
Do what?
I'm here to fix your toilet. I'm the plumber. We spoke on the phone. Name's Ray Patel.
Hello, Mr. Patel. I'm Talmadge Fox. I'm the musical director for the First Baptist Church of Stillwater.
Shot entirely remotely from New York and Chicago via green screen.
This is true. I have learned to use green screen over the past couple of months. So for those of you wondering about how COVID has affected the industry, we're doing everything from home now. Audition tapes, everything. We were talking with Mary Alice from the alumni department, who was nice enough to put this together before we started this webinar, about how much the industry has changed because of COVID and because of the quarantine. Andy, how have you seen the industry change?
It's affected the different areas differently. I've had to learn a lot about voiceover production and recording from home. So I have an entire closet in my home here, outfitted and heavily padded so that I can record any commercials or anything that come in from home. But yeah, I feel like it's made us very generative. We're making more material ourselves and more resourceful and more expanding on skill sets that we didn't even know we had.
Yes, and I'll say one of the big differences, aside from theaters being closed, we are so ready for them to open back up once it's safe to do so. One of the big differences is the audition process for theater and for television has completely changed. So it used to be, I'll answer two questions at once. I think somebody asked, how do we get our auditions? Where are we sort of professionally? Andy, if I'm remembering right, you have both a legit agent who represents you for theater, movies, and television, and also a commercial agent who represents you for commercials as well, right?
Yeah, it's all sort of under the same umbrella, and voiceover as well, and it all comes generally from the same office, but I have different agents who handle the different parts of that.
Right. And it's sort of rare that an actor will have the same commercial and legit agent as the same office. It does happen sometimes, but usually if you live in a larger city like New York, Chicago, LA, Atlanta, you might have one person that handles getting you appointments, auditions for theater, movies, TV, and one that handles getting you appointments for commercials. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying all of those appointments used to happen in person, and now they're happening in our living rooms or in our bedrooms or wherever we can set up a backdrop and lights to make it look like you're in an audition studio. I
think we're coming close to time here, Jonathan.
We are close to time. You know what? We don't have a hard deadline here. We might go 1 or 2 minutes over, just for those of you watching. Andy, anything else you want to plug before we say goodnight to all these lovely folks?
I just would love to encourage everybody one more time to check out the excerpt of Talmadge and Ray that is streaming now, if you haven't already. It was a joy to shoot. Again, I feel like we've learned a lot of new skills in working this way, and it's always a joy to come back to and to continue collaborating this way. It's not ideally how we do it, but it would be great to work in person. But it's always a joy to come back and reconnect and keep on making stuff together.
Yes. Thank you for that plug. The one more shameless piece of information about that. You have only through January 29th. Like I said, that's this coming Friday. This festival is a competitive festival, so there are 3 other finalists. We are one of 4 finalists out of 91 submissions. So if you have the time to buy a ticket to watch all 4 excerpts, you will be afforded the opportunity to vote for your favorite. Now, I don't want to tell you that you have to vote for Talmadge and Ray, but I will say that if you call yourself a spider, you have to. You sort of have to. Andy, it's been so great to talk to you for this little retrospective.
You too, Jonathan.
Yes, thank you, Mary Alice, for putting this together. Thank all of you for watching. If you like this kind of content, you can drop a note to the alumni office, alumni.richmond.edu. We hope you have a safe and healthy night and a safe and healthy existence.
Thanks, everybody. Go Spiders.
Go Spiders. Good night.